Welcome to the side of Japan that travel brochures conveniently forget to mention. Beyond the neon lights and matcha lattes lies a world where folklore and modern nightmares collide, and you won't believe how scary they get. Red Room Curse. Japan has always had a complicated relationship with the unseen, but nothing quite compares to the Red Room Curse. Imagine surfing the web in the early 2000s, just minding your own business, when a flash banner pops up with a simple, haunting question. Do you like the Red Room? It sounds like a typical early internet prank, right? But the legend says this window is impossible to close. Each time you click it away, the message shifts, becoming more aggressive until a list of names appears on your screen, the last one being your own. Shortly after, the user is found in a room where the walls have been freshly painted red, supposedly with their own life force. This was one of Japan's first truly viral creepypastas, and it blurred the lines between digital glitch and ancient curse. The Wet Woman. Speaking of things that are impossible to escape, let's move from the digital realm to the water's edge. If you find yourself wandering near a secluded Japanese riverbank or seashore, keep an eye out for Nure-Onna, the Wet Woman. She's a striking figure from the torso up, with long flowing hair and a beautiful human face. Below the waist, however, she's a massive serpent with scales that shimmer under the moonlight. Some versions of her story even give her webbed hands and razor-sharp claws, just in case the giant snake tail wasn't intimidating enough. The Nure-Onna is a master of the decoy game. She often appears as a weary woman cradling a bundled infant, pleading for a passerby to help her hold the child for a moment. It seems like a simple act of kindness, but the second you take the baby, its weight begins to multiply exponentially. It becomes unnaturally heavy, pinning the victim to the spot so they can't run. That's when she strikes, using her long, forked tongue to drain her victim's blood or simply dragging them into the watery depths. It's a brutal reminder that in folklore, helpfulness is often a death sentence. The Hungry Skeleton. If you thought a snake woman was bad, imagine something 15 times the size of a man made entirely of human bones. This is the Gashadokuro, the Hungry Skeleton. Unlike many spirits that act out of malice, the Gashadokuro is born from pure, unadulterated suffering. It is a composite entity formed from the bones of people who died in mass tragedies, famines, plagues, or bloody battlefields, where their bodies were left unburied and forgotten. The more neglected remains it finds, the larger and more powerful it grows. This creature is basically a walking monument to collective grief and anger. It wanders the countryside late at night, its glowing eyes scanning for anyone unlucky enough to be out past curfew. Because it's so massive, it doesn't need to be subtle. If it catches a traveler, it simply grabs them, crushes them with its skeletal grip, and drinks their blood before devouring what's left. It is a literal manifestation of the idea that if we don't respect the dead, they will eventually come back to remind us of our failures. The village that isn't there. While many legends deal with monsters, some of the most unsettling stories are about places. Enter Inunaki Village, a tale that exploded onto the Japanese internet in the 1990s. Legend has it that somewhere in Fukuoka Prefecture, hidden behind a narrow path near the old Inunaki Tunnel, exists a community that has completely seceded from Japan. They supposedly rejected the national constitution and live by their own primitive, violent laws. It's the ultimate wrong turn scenario. The stories of what happens to outsiders vary, but none of them are pleasant. Some say the villagers have wild, inhuman eyes and will chase strangers with axes the moment they are spotted. Others tell the story of a young couple from the 1970s who stumbled upon the village after their car broke down, only to be murdered by a man wielding a sickle. The legend gained massive traction after an anonymous letter was sent to a TV station in 1999, describing it as a village in Japan that isn't part of Japan. Whether it's an actual lost colony or just a localized fever dream, it taps into the primal fear of what happens when society's rules no longer apply. The persistence of sight. In Japanese folklore, sometimes a curse isn't something you catch, it's something you become. Tenome is a yokai with one of the most distinctive and terrifying designs in the entire pantheon. He looks like an elderly man, But where his eyes should be on his face, there is only smooth, blank skin. Instead, his eyes are located in the palms of his hands. The origin story is heartbreakingly grim. He was once a blind man who was brutally attacked and robbed. As he lay dying, his last desperate wish was for eyes on his hands, so he could see the faces of those who had harmed him. His wish was granted, but at the cost of his humanity. He was reborn as a monster that haunts cemeteries and deserted fields at night. He moves silently and with incredible speed, pursuing anyone he encounters. While he originally wanted justice, as Tonome, he is indiscriminately merciful. It's a tragic cycle. A man who wanted to see his attackers so badly that he became a creature that can now only see victims. The verse of no return. If you prefer your horror to be more literary, there is the legend of Tomino's Hell. This isn't a ghost or a monster, but a poem written in 1919. The text describes a young man's harrowing journey through the underworld, encouraged by his sisters. On the surface, it's just a dark piece of literature, but the urban legend surrounding it is much more sinister. It is strictly believed that this poem must never ever be read aloud. The superstition claims that if you dare to speak the words of Tomino's Hell out loud, you will be struck by a curse or meet a sudden, untimely end. It's the ultimate forbidden fruit for the curious. In an age where everything is recorded and shared, the idea that a simple arrangement of words could be lethal is a fascinating throwback to the power of ancient taboos. Sometimes silence really is golden. The sound of the tracks. Perhaps the most famous modern urban legend in Japan is that of Teke Teke. This is the vengeful spirit of a schoolgirl who met a horrific end on the railway tracks. She was accidentally or intentionally pushed under a train and cut in half. Because she died in such a state of shock and agony, she returned as a rei, a spirit consumed by the need to share her pain. She is often found near train stations or in quiet urban areas at night. What makes her truly terrifying is her movement. Lacking a lower body, she uses her hands and elbows to drag her torso across the ground with incredible speed. As she moves, her elbows hitting the pavement create a distinct tek-tek scratching sound. If she catches you, she uses a scythe or her own sharpened hands to saw you in half, duplicating the trauma of her own death. She is the personification of the dangers that lurk in the mundane infrastructure of modern life. The Mountain Witch. Long before trains and the internet, there was the Yama-Uba, the Mountain Witch. She is a staple of Japanese folklore, depicted as a hideous elderly woman with long, unkempt hair and eyes that glow with an eerie light. She lives deep in the wilderness, usually in a remote forest hut, far from the prying eyes of civilization. While she might look like a frail hermit, she possesses immense supernatural power. The Yama-Uba is not a benevolent grandmother figure. Legends warn that she kidnaps women from nearby villages, devours livestock, and has a particular taste for small children. She is fiercely territorial and will torture anyone who wanders into her mountain domain. She represents the wild, untamable side of nature, the part of the world that remains dangerous no matter how many cities we build. The spider's seduction. If the Yama-Uba is the brute force of the mountains, the Joragumo is the subtle predator of the valleys. This is the entwining bride, a giant spider that has lived for hundreds of years and gained the ability to shapeshift into a beautiful woman. During the day, she appears as an alluring lady in a stunning kimono, often seen near waterfalls or in quiet forest clearings. She uses her beauty to lure travelers, specifically men, back to her home, which is usually a cave or a hidden hut. Once the victim is relaxed and off guard, her true form begins to emerge. The upper body of a girl joined to the massive, hairy abdomen and legs of a spider. She doesn't just kill, she orchestrates a slow demise. She secretes a potent poison that causes her victims to die in agony, while she weaves a deadly web to preserve them for her next meal. It's a classic cautionary tale about the dangers of being led by your desires instead of your common sense. The spirits in the walls. We end on a slightly different note with the Zashiki Warashi. Unlike the vengeful ghosts and predatory monsters we've discussed, these are mischievous house spirits. They usually take the form of 5- or 6-year-old children with ruddy faces, dressed in traditional kimonos or warrior suits. They aren't evil, but they are incredibly playful. They might move your furniture, slam doors in the middle of the night, or hide your keys just to hear you complain. In many ways, having a Zashiki Warashi is a blessing. It is widely believed that their presence brings immense good luck and prosperity to a household. Most families only see them for a split second, a small figure darting past a doorway or a brief reflection in a mirror. However, the legend has a dark flip side. If the spirit ever decides to leave, it takes the family's luck with it, often leading the household into immediate ruin and tragedy. It's a reminder that in Japan, even the good spirits require a level of respect and care, because the line between a blessing and a curse is thinner than a spider's silk.